Hello and welcome. In this lecture video, we'll finish our discussion on bond retirement. We'll also talk about installment notes, and then we'll also talk about the effective interest amortization method, okay? So recall when we left off with this lecture, with the last lecture video, we did this problem, and we showed our gain on retirement or in our cash and in our bonds payable and our premium on bonds payable. And this one had a call premium of $3,000. So I want you to redo this problem. Same par value, 100,000. Same carrying value, 104,500. But rather than having a call premium of 3,000, I want you to have a call premium of 10,000. So the call premium is not 3,000, it's 10,000, okay? So I want you to think about whether there'll be a gain or a loss with a call premium of 10,000 and do the entire journal entry, okay? So I want you to pause the lecture video, do the journal entry, and then come back and check your work, okay? Hello and welcome back. So this is what you should have gotten for that journal entry, which is the document camera just adjusted there. I think we're good now. All right, we're good. Okay, sorry about that. So what I asked you to do is to redo that same problem with the call premium, though, not of 3,000, but of 10,000. So that means that the total price that the company would have to pay to retire those bonds would be equal to the par of the 100,000 plus the call premium of 10,000, so the credit to cash of 110. Same debit to bonds payable, same debit to premium on bonds payable, which we saw with the call premium of 3,000. But then we have the loss on the bond retirement. So if we look over here, why do we have a loss? Well, remember, the carrying value would be equal to our 104,500. The price is 110. The difference between the 110 and then the 104,500 is $5,500. Carrying value is less than price. That implies a loss. That is our loss on bond retirement right there. And this is another expense on the income statement. That's what this is. Another expense on the income statement. This over here is additional revenue on the income statement, okay? So now let's talk about installment notes, okay? So installment notes is like a car payment. Have you ever had a car payment, or if you've ever had a mortgage payment? Probably haven't had a mortgage payment yet, but once you go out in the working world and you're working hard and you start to want to buy a house, you'll have a mortgage payment. Mortgage payments, car payments, student loan payments, those are all installment notes. So what is installment note? Is when you make the exact same payment every month or every year, every period. The payment that you make is exactly the same. And then every time you make a payment, part of your payment goes to the principal, the outstanding principal on your loan. Part of your payment goes to interest. Part of your payment goes to interest. Part of it goes to principal. Okay, so an installment note uses regular payments of principal plus interest. Okay, so let's walk through an example. On January 1st, 2011, our company borrows $60,000 to purchase equipment. It signs an 8% installment note that requires 6 annual payments of principal plus interest. What would be our journal entry to record the issuance of the note payable? Okay, so when we issue this note payable, we get cash, right? This is like you taking out a student loan. You get cash and then you have a liability. So we get cash of $60,000. So we're going to debit cash of $60,000. And then this is a note payable, which is a liability. Notes payable of $60,000. So our journal entry, debit cash, credit notes payable. In terms of the accounting equation, assets are going up. Remember this? Assets are going up. Cash is an asset. We recognize assets increasing with the debit. We're getting cash. Notes payable is our liability. Liability is going up. Recognize that with a credit. Okay? Now record the first payment. In order to do that, we have to figure out what the payment is. We have to calculate the payment. So what we're going to do is we're going to first calculate, we're going to figure out our factor. We have to figure out our present value factor in order to calculate this. So what we're going to do is we're going to look in present value annuity table, interest rate equals 8%, number of periods equals 6. And that is table B.3 in your textbook. So if you look in table B.3 in appendix B, interest rate equals 8%, the number of periods equals 6, you will get the factor. You'll get the factor from the present value of an annuity table. And that factor, the PV factor, when you look that up, is equal to 4.6229. Okay? So then what I'm going to do in order to figure out my payment is I'm going to take my loan amount divided by my factor, and then that equals my payment. Why did I do that? Well, remember, if I knew my payment, right, this is my annuity payment, and I know my factor, and I can multiply my annuity payment times my annuity factor, that gives me my present value. In this situation, I know my present value, and I can look up my factor, and I can divide it to figure out my payment. So when I do the math, I get a payment equal to $12,979. That is my payment. Okay? So now continuing on, we need to calculate how much of that payment goes to interest, how much of that payment goes to principal. Okay? So the first thing that we're going to do to figure that out is we're going to multiply the outstanding loan balance times the interest rate. And then that equals our interest expense. Okay? And then number 2, we will take that payment, we will take our payment, which was equal to our $12,979 minus our interest expense, and then that is how much goes to principal. Okay? So what I can do is when we do our first payment, our outstanding principal is $60,000 because that's the amount of our note. I can multiply that times my interest rate, which is 0.08, 8%, and then that gives me my $4,800, $4,800 interest expense. Okay? Then what I can do is I can take my payment, $12,979, minus my $4,800 interest expense. And then that would give me my $8,179, which is how much goes to principal. Okay? So in terms of our journal entry, we look over here in terms of our journal entry, and I'm going to flip the page over to do this. To record our interest expense, I will debit interest expense for $4,800. And then to record this decrease to principal, right? This is how much I'm going to decrease principal by, which is the outstanding note payable. So basically, I'm going to decrease the note payable by $8,179. Notes payable is a liability. Way to decrease a liability is with the debit. And then, of course, we have to make that cash payment of $12,979. So whenever I have to pay cash, I credit cash. How does this keep the accounting equation in balance? Well, assets are going down. Remember, debit, credit, credit, debit. Assets are going down by $12,979, right? Assets are going down by $12,979 because of the cash. Notes payable is a liability, so liabilities decrease by $8,179. And then this is an expense that negatively affects equity. Remember, the E stands for equity. Expenses go up, equity goes down. Equity decreases by $4,800. This side went down by the $12,979. This side, when you add these two, $12,979, the accounting equation stays in balance, okay? So what I want you to do now is to do the second payment, but in order to do that, I'm going to first put you in the right direction. I got my notes payable. So remember, I had that $60,000 right over there, and then I had $8,179 that I debited it. So now what I can do is figure out the outstanding balance in my notes payable of $51,821. So when I'm calculating my interest expense for this second journal entry, the second payment, you need to multiply $51,821 times the interest rate. Okay, so go ahead and stop the lecture video, do this problem, and then we'll come back and then we'll check it. Okay, so let's see how you did. So we take our $51,821, which is our outstanding loan balance, times our interest rate. This is our interest expense. Take our payment minus the interest expense. This is how much goes to notes payable. Our journal entry is then debit interest expense, debit notes payable, and credit cash. Now, if you take a look over here, the thing that's pretty interesting is watch how much over time, watch how much of your payment always stays the same, $12,979, but it's divided between interest and then principal. And look at over time, more interest, less principal, less interest, and then more principal over time. So in the beginning, more interest, less principal, but then as you go over time, that payment applies more to principal than to interest. And then the same thing happens with your housing payment or also your any car payment that you might make too. Okay? So if I say right over here, that's what I was talking about, the top of this page is that payments are equal, but interest declines each year. And why is that again? Because the principal balance of the note declines. So look, remember, I'm multiplying this times 0.08, but this is a smaller number every single time, multiplying it times 0.08, so then the interest expense continues to decrease, okay? And then as the amount of interest decreases each year, the portion applied to principal also increases, okay? So in the next lecture video, I'm going to talk about the effective interest amortization, leases, and then do some additional problems, okay? Thank you so much.